Doc Pop, welcome to the WP Minute.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be on.
I'm going to play something real quick, introing you. Here we go.
Hey, my name's Dr. Popular. I'm a yo-yoer, blogger, and craftster living in San Francisco. Wanted to show some of my crafts because I know some of my stuff is a little confusing in photographs.
16 years ago, my friend, you have outpaced me by 5 years. Your YouTube channel goes back 16 years ago. That was a clip of Doc Pop's craft catalog, vlog, I should say, 2007. You've been in the game a while, and I'm happy to catch up to see what you're up to these days. What made you just jumping back into the time machine 16 years ago on your YouTube channel? Always a love for video, always a love for producing this type of artwork. How did it start?
Sharing stuff has always been something I've been passionate about. Not just my work, like being able to reach out to other artists and talk to them about what they're doing. So like this all comes from zine culture. Do you know zines, Matt?
I do.
So I grew up in a small town in Tennessee, Lewisburg, Tennessee, hour south of Nashville. And in the 90s, grunge music has taken off, and I've got no way to learn about what's happening and stuff like that. And I heard about this thing called zines, and so you started kind of documenting your local bands, documenting the music you're making and the artists around you, going to Kinko's, printing them up, sending them out to Olympia, Washington, and then folks in Olympia send you a bunch back, right? And that kind of communication was what got me really interested in this whole world. And blogging was just, to me, it was like an electronic version of a zine. And then video is just like, okay, this is just the next thing. So like all of this passion I have for like social media really comes back to just making stuff and sharing it with people, being able to, reach out directly to someone I admire and ask them a question. And when you have like a zine or you have a camera, it gives you that excuse, it gives you that access. I would normally walk up to this guy and just be like, I love your art. What type of brush do you use or something, right? What guitar are you using or whatever, kind of lame question like that. But you got that camera there, and all of a sudden there's that permission and that kind of like ability to just have this direct conversation with someone you admire and be able to learn with them. And then you're not going to hoard that. Obviously, your goal isn't to. My goal isn't to get lots of views. It's to get, whoever needs to see it, get them a chance to see it, make it as easy for them to see it.
Website's docpop.org. You're working on a new project for WordPress.com called the Fediverse Files. We're going to talk about that in a moment. WordPress.com/Fediverse. We're going to dive into what the Fediverse is and how you got this project, why you're super passionate about it. But I have a question about content creation and sort of your view on how it's evolved. Again, going back 16 years ago on your YouTube channel to where social media is today, where short form content is today. I'll frame it for you. I'm not a fan of the TikToks and the reels and the stuff that disappears in 24 hours. I like podcasting. I like long form video. I like creating the stuff that is much more everlasting, deeper connection, but it's not the stuff that people are at least that I'm told, this is the stuff that people are tuning into. Like people are saying, oh, it's got to be TikTok. It's got to be Instagram. You got to do these short things. What's your thoughts on content creation? Like what type of content is important to you and what are you most passionate about creating?
So as the type of social media has changed throughout the years and the way people use it has changed, I have not really changed that much. My interest has always been, I just want to document this because I think it's cool and I want to show it in the best way I can. If your goal is to make a living through social media, which is not what I'm doing, and man, that sounds like a stressful gig. But if your goal is that, then, I think you have to like follow, like you do need to, if you're on TikTok, you need to post like 3 times a week and do 1 live stream a week or whatever. Like there's these kind of formulas that are tried and true. But if that's not your goal, is, making money exclusively from that, I just say do what's fun for you. So if TikTok's not fun for you, I don't recommend trying to get on it because like you feel obligated to. For me, I really like watching stuff on YouTube, so I kind of grok YouTube, and that's where I kind of live, where my content lives, and I don't push myself to do whatever the trend is. And man, those trends have changed because I remember in the early days, it was like, if you were longer than 3 minutes, no one's going to watch your video. That's crazy long for the internet. And, I watched a 4-hour documentary on YouTube about Eve Online, and all the rules are changed. Like all the videos that are getting shown to me are at least an hour long now. So I'm not trying to adapt to that or whatever YouTube suddenly decides is their new priority and they're going to push things to make that. And I'm not getting millions of views on all. A few of mine have, probably not that craft video from that's probably comfortably sitting at like 50 views. Oh, 4,000. Okay.
4,000.
But it's if you're for me, it's nice when things do get a lot of views, and it's a little bit like I just make a lot of content, and so I'm buying a lot of lottery tickets, and every now and then one of those tickets will scratch off and it'll do really well, and that feels good. But because there's no income associated for me, it's just about making that stuff and being able to open those doors and have opportunities. If for business wise, I focus a little bit more on this interview might help get people to come visit my site and buy something, or might help get my foot in the door at a job I'm looking at or something like that. So that's a little bit where I'm going from. And the numbers, that's if that's a thing you want to get into, you definitely need to follow the rules and do all that stuff. There's no way we're working around it. But I just, comfortably decided I'm just going to make stuff that makes me happy and try to be as productive as possible. And it's been fun. That's why I haven't burned out, I think, over 16 years.
Half of your title is professional yo-yoer. The other half is freelance WordPress content creator. I think folks in the audience know you for the 8 years at Torque Mag, I think, roughly. Something around, was it 8 years roughly?
It was about 10, it was just like 1 month shy of 10 years.
10 years. Yep. So a lot of folks know you from that. What did you find WordPress and then you found Torque? Or did you find Torque and then WordPress? How did your love and passion for all things WordPress come about?
So I mentioned that I love blogging, and so of course I ended up on WordPress from Blogger. I think I was first it was like some MSN Microsoft kind of blogging platform that predates Blogger, and then there was Blogger, and then WordPress had that really easy tool to move your content off of Blogger, and Google was really cool about delivering that in a friendly way and not hoarding it. And
not
due to
these
that,
days.
Yeah. But due to that, it was very easy to get onto WordPress. And my friend Scott Beal, who owns laughingsquid.com, he was a San Franciscan at the time, very interconnected with our art scene. And he was just hooking up artists. If you were like doing events in the city or doing stuff, whether it was Burning Man related or just local pranks or whatever, he would hook you up with hosting. So that's how I got on there. And it wasn't like a passion for WordPress. It was definitely one of those things that's like a tool I use and I like it, and there's no complaints. If somebody asked what should they use, I'd be like, oh, you should definitely use this. And it was because of making content. A friend of mine who works at WP Engine saw the videos I was making, knew that I wasn't like a WordPress advocate, but I loved using the platform. And he was like, how would you feel about doing this? And that was a really fun gig. 10 years of interviewing people about WordPress was really cool.
Did your perspective on WordPress, I'm sure it did, but I'm curious to hear how, did your perspective on WordPress change as an end user? Like, do you end up having empathy for both sides? Like, we all love it, we all use it, but we know it's not the best for just this one thing that it's great for blogging, but I'm sure there are some things that can improve the experience. But what's happening these days in the ethos of WordPress is just a lot of frustration. Like, we got a lot of newbies coming in, which is great. Problem is they're like, this is not that good for building websites. Then we have a lot of developers who've been here for years going, listen, we're trying to make it better. You have to bear with us. How did that empathy evolve, if anything, if you can illustrate that for us, for both camps? Because you were here for a while representing one of the longest standing WordPress hosting company brands through Torque. You probably heard from both camps, end users, advanced users. How did that evolve for you, if anything? Do you have a different perspective for beginners and more advanced folks these days?
It started off as a way, this is just a tool I like, and if I hired a developer, they might be very concerned about the politics behind it. But I was, very kind of away from that. I was just a user who occasionally hired someone every 3 years to, update my site or something like that. And I never really dived into it too much, other than just being like, man, this sure is, I guess ostensible would be the word. Like, as even someone who does not do any coding at all still, it's very easy to, I wish there was a plugin for this. Well, let me do a quick search and there's 3 of them, right? So that's the beautiful thing that's always been around. When I started documenting it, it definitely felt like in the beginning, I was filled with a sense of just huge optimism. And then somewhere along the line, I became, I guess, so close to it that I actually heard about the discourse, right? The quote unquote discourse, and like, dramas and stuff like that. And that was kind of a bummer. And it's hard for me now to kind of think about what perspective new users would have, because there's been that major change with Gutenberg, which I think is probably a good term, good change for users. But I can't help but to think about, like, all the behind the scenes stuff. I guess when it comes down to it, if someone were to come to me now and be like, what should I use for blogging? It's not quite as simple as it used to be, but not really because I have that insider knowledge or because WordPress has even changed that much. For some people, Wix is just kind of maybe a good, all they want to do is create something for, like, a birthday party or something they're doing for one weekend, and then they're going to get rid of it or whatever. And that's where I actually come kind of confused, is when people these days ask me, what should I be using? Where should I be hosting or whatever? And I'm like, oh, there's a whole, first off, we got to pick out which CMS you want to be on and how much changes you want to be, or if you just want something kind of ready to go. Do you want a single landing page or what? And I guess that's good to have that problem where there's so many things. I wouldn't avoid recommending WordPress because of my time kind of in there. But yeah, it is hard at this point sometimes to figure out, like, maybe it's not perfect for everyone. Yeah, it's complex.
How important is open source to you as a user of WordPress?
It's very important for me because of those the plugins that I was talking about, the ability to get themes. For a lot of folks, it's important just for cost. Getting free themes or free plugins is a huge priority for them. Hosting is sometimes pretty expensive, so anywhere where you can save is nice. But as a believer in the open web, it's very important for me. I think that's a harder thing to communicate maybe to someone who just wants to create a website for a weekend. But for me personally, I tried my best to support things that are open protocols that can help improve other things, make the web better, not just kind of lock people in.
We're going to talk about that Fediverse stuff in a moment. I want to know how you, if at all, and listen, I don't, because I don't know how myself, but how do you relay that? Do you try to relay that importance to maybe not friends and family, but maybe you have colleagues that are trying to decide between WordPress and Wix, and do you try to tell them, hey, you should make the nod to open source, even if it's a little bit more difficult to get started with WordPress. You should care about open source, for the open web. Do you try to make that case with the average user, or do you just, I'm not going to try to go down that rabbit hole? They're still trying to figure out how to, design their website.
We all should eat healthier. I should drink less.
Yes.
We all know we should eat healthier, right? No one needs to tell us, like, this is the thing you should be doing. You shouldn't be eating that junk food. And it's maybe a better case to try to say, this is better because everyone knows, like, these big companies are going to get bigger and eventually you'll kind of regret it. But still, even myself, like, I'm not running Linux. I'm on Chrome right now, Chrome browser. I know that I've kind of given up some stuff and I try to fight the battles that I can, but I'm not going to try to make an argument to someone explaining open source to someone who, is probably never even going to be contributing to it. They're just going to be an end user. Instead, I'm just going to try to sell them on those features. I'm going to try to be like, this is something that if this company goes away overnight, it should be pretty easy to find someone. You might not be able to do it, but to find someone who can help you get it running somewhere else or port it over. And you can't say that about this other company. That's the way I think about it. I don't go for open source as the best thing to do morally or anything like that. If they're not a developer and they're not going to be actually kind of going in under the hood, I just try to make the cases for the things that are awesome, which is usually focusing on the free plugins or the usually free plugins, and the flexibility that you have and that safety. Like I said, as someone who's been making content for, I guess, since zines, but like making content on YouTube for 16 years, if YouTube goes away overnight, man, all that stuff's kind of gone, and that's a bummer. So I'm definitely thinking at this point, what's going to be the thing that if this goes away, because I've seen so many things come and go, and so I try to kind of share that with people, like this is a better long-term bet for you. And some people don't think long-term, they're just trying to get this thing up for, right now. And I don't try to win them over with, arguments about open source or anything like that.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like a bit of a fraud because I say, I love WordPress for the open source angle of it, right? Its roots in open source. One for the end user, as this is your thing. You can move it around. You can bring it to different web hosts. You're not locked into just one. So I love that. I love too that it's a community of folks, and even if the overall direction of the open source project isn't led in a democratic way, you still have, a voice and vote to do things. Like I just had a little feature added to WordPress 6.6 as just a, hey, I'm going to raise my hand and say this should be added. It was added, and I got credit to it. I was like, this is pretty cool. Yeah. So like I like it for that. And then I say the open web too often, but I'm not like you said, like I used to run Linux, when I was younger and I had time to like mess around and break things and okay, I got to fix my computer now. I don't do that anymore, right? I run Mac. I use Brave, but I run Mac and I run an iPhone. There's diehard open source people who are using like the Graphene phone. They're running Linux. They're not touching any like no pixels or cookies ever come near their computer. That's not me, but I love the open web for the mere fact that you can have choice. When you don't like this path anymore, you at least have this other path, right? And that you could go down. It might not be as good, it might not be as sexy or fast or have all the crazy algorithms, but it's there, it's open, and you have access to it. And that's about as far as I go with, my understanding of the open web and what's great about it. Does the open web mean anything else to you, like organizations, big corporations, controlling the web? That's one thing. Is there anything else about the open web that really you're passionate about or that you really like about it?
Well, you mentioned the big corporations. It is interesting that sometimes we go deeper and deeper into open web stuff to the point where one company maybe kind of dominates it. And the example that comes up for me is Google and Gmail. Email is this perfect example of like an open federated system where anybody can communicate with anyone. But if you talk to someone these days, Google has gotten so good at it that they're basically email. Like Gmail is basically email. And if anybody these days tries setting up an email server, they learn the hard way that Google doesn't want them communicating with their people. Like I keep hearing from folks like that. So that's the interesting thing to me is when things go really well and they seem to be going perfect and this technology is catching on and we've got like all this money coming in to pay developers to make it even better from these big corporations. And then after a certain while, you're like, oh wait, we're just in another silo by accident, and that's such a bummer when that happens.
Yeah. There's this, I don't know how closely you follow the podcasting space, like the actual industry news of things. I follow it pretty closely. There's a whole open source movement called Podcasting 2.0. It's like WordPress for the RSS feed of podcasts, right? They enhance the RSS feed, they make it better, et cetera, et cetera. And they're always advocating for other apps to adopt this technology, just like if WordPress was advocating for another web host to use WordPress on their hosting platform. And the big thing in podcasting these days, because Spotify was supposed to come in their words, save podcasting, but they were just trying to build a walled garden around acquiring shows and having premium features, but all in the Spotify app. They've since given up that. They've given up those reins, and their most figurehead of podcasting, let's say Joe Rogan, because it is the biggest show, they just now went to open publishing. He's back on all the airwaves since the start of the new year. So it looks like they've sort of given up that which is good. Like it's a good thing that they've given up trying to rein RSS feeds into their own platform. But now YouTube is the one that everyone is looking at as like the savior of podcasting because people are going there for search and discover. And don't you want that, Mrs. Podcaster? Don't you want that search and discoverability for your show because no one else is giving it to you? And everyone's going, yes. And now look at the ad revenue is going up and the viewership is going up. And you must have a YouTube channel if you want a successful podcast. It's like, whoa. It's all gonna. What have we not learned our lesson 18 times over with this stuff? It's just gonna live on YouTube. And what has Google shown us time and time again? They keep getting rid of things, including their own podcast app, which they just end of lifed on all Android devices as of last month. It's just like, what? Why are we saying these things? These corporations are just for one thing. It's for profit. It's for revenue. It's for their ad network, and it's never the creator. And I'm sure from your YouTube experience, if you have AdSense on your channel, mine has been like cut by more than 60% in terms of ad revenue coming in over the last 4 or 5 years. It just keeps getting less and less, and we keep losing out. It's a frustrating experience. I don't have a direct question there, but just more framing these frustrations of giving all your content to one silo is very difficult.
I just want to mention you stumbled upon one of my favorite things in the world, which is RSS. There have been several open protocols on the web that I've benefited from as a web user, but I never really was aware of the idea of an open protocol until RSS, maybe because it sounded kind of complex. But this ability to not have to go and check someone's site every day, or someone posts once a year, right? Back in 2007 or 2008, you don't have to like remember sites and see if they've updated. So the ability to just kind of like set up this RSS feed, which Google had an amazing feed reader called Google Reader. And so all you had to do is just go to the site, grab the RSS, put it in, and then you just check Google Reader every day, which was you could use any other RSS reader. That's the one that we used. And that was, to me, the beginning of this walls coming down. I thought in 2008 we were going to be, I thought Facebook's doomed. I didn't even have to go to Facebook, because back then you could actually get an RSS of someone's Facebook page. So even Facebook, you could just scrape their page. And, oh my God, podcasts are powered by RSS. Everybody's using RSS and they don't even know it, right? And of course, there's other open protocols like HTML or IMAP or, whatever. There's other ones that we all use, but it wasn't really until RSS that I realized that if someone builds a standard and we get around the standard, this magical stuff can happen. But then, we talked about Gmail kind of becoming the big thing, and then now it's basically a silo. When Google Reader was killed for Google Plus, which was also killed and replaced with something else, who knows, right? But when Google Reader was killed, all of a sudden RSS was killed too, because you could have used anything. And there was lots of great alternatives. There still are. I use them. But for the most part, when that big, easy tool went away, everyone just gave up on it. And we, kind of built up silos again, and it's happening again. It's this cycle. I hate it, Matt. I hate this cycle and this optimism, and then this like somehow getting tricked into supporting the wrong thing. You're like, oh, they're doing the right thing. They're making this better. Oh my God, they dominate the industry, and now nobody can do anything anymore. And I've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah. I've often wondered, imagine if RSS had won out over the like button, right? So let's just say like the like button took over like all of social media. It's likes, it's hearts, it's whatever. It's all these things that just drive this like vanity engagement. But if RSS had won, just like maybe your email address or your phone number represented a way to get connected to you, if everyone kind of knew what RSS was and we all had our own RSS address, let's say, that had all of our content on it, man, what a world that would be, because you would have that direct one-to-one relationship with, I have 1,000 subscribers that go to my RSS feed every month or every day, whatever it is, and it's all of your content, photos, blog, podcast, video, whatever. Man, what a world that would be. And these corporations, Google, Facebook, all of them, they don't want it, because that is open distribution that anyone can connect with. Any app can connect to it. And guess what they can't insert is the ad network, is the algo to scoop this stuff up. Anyway, I don't want to get on too much of a soapbox about RSS, because I do love it as well. Something similar to that, though, let's get into the Fediverse project that you're working on with WordPress.com, WordPress.com/Fediverse. How did this project come about? Is this something that you pitched to WordPress with your freelance WordPress content creator hat on, and they said yes, or vice versa? How did it all come about?
This was a beautiful thing that happened on social media. And there's been so many lucky, wonderful things that have happened where you use social media for a long time, and sometimes you put something out there and you get this response. When I was laid off from Torque about 4 months ago, I put out a message saying, if I could do anything right now, I would love to somehow help spread the word about the Fediverse. And I think that was like one of two things I said. I'd either like to interview artists or I'd like to spread the word about the Fediverse. And there's no money in the Fediverse. It's like saying
I
want
thought
to
you were
be
going
an
to say there's no
RSS.
money in interviewing artists.
Yeah, actually, there's nobody out there at all. But it would be like if in 2009 I was like, I want to help promote RSS, right? There's nobody paying, right? And so saying I want to support the Fediverse is like, well, you can, but you're probably not going to get paid for it. And just as some luck, I think some right people saw it, and some good coincidences happened where I guess WordPress.com or an Automatic were looking at Fediverse stuff. They have Matthias Kieferle on staff who's building the WordPress to ActivityPub plugin, and so they're interested in it, and they're always kind of dabbling with it. And I guess they saw that, or it was shown to them, and they reached out to me, and we had this conversation. And the Fediverse Files is the end result, which is currently a 5-episode series. There might be another series, series 2 might come, but series 1 is in the can. And it is meant to explain the Fediverse in very simplistic terms. So it's not like a deep dive into Fediverse politics at all. The first episode is what is the Fediverse, and talking about simple analogies to help people understand it, and to get them to share my enthusiasm, and to hopefully get them started on there. The second one's an interview with the co-creator of ActivityPub. We've got lots of other cool interviews. So it's been a dream job for me, and definitely a once in a lifetime opportunity where you're like, there is a thing I'm extremely passionate about. Oh, you're going to give me money to like write songs and draw animations about this thing. And I couldn't be any more prouder. I'm definitely going to be showing this to my grandkids or whatever.
Yeah, I watched the full first episode yesterday when it came out. It's fantastic. I want to talk about the production of it in a moment, but in terms of explaining the Fediverse, number one, you're doing a great job, like breaking it down, like super simplistic. There are things that I learned from it that, I'm not an expert in the Fediverse by any stretch of the imagination. Again, really only got into it a few years ago before the whole sort of Twitter fiasco, Twitter to X fiasco. I was there for the podcasting 2.0 stuff, because largely that's where they lived and communicated with. But doing a fantastic job, like breaking it down, making people understand it. So I applaud you on that. Here's the thing. It's like what you said earlier, is things I've said before, is, look, we should all eat healthier. We should all drink less. If we want to lose weight, stop eating the pizza. And I felt like when the whole we don't want to be on Twitter anymore, what are the alternatives? And people are saying, Mastodon, go to the Fediverse, all this stuff. And people got there and like, okay, wait a minute, why doesn't it look as good as Twitter? Where are all my friends? Why doesn't it do these things? And then people go, okay, I guess I gotta go back to Twitter now. And you're just like, you should have stayed here. Like, this is here. This is the open web. This is what it looks like. It's never going to be as polished, and that steroid injection of news and breaking news and stream and the algorithm. It's just not there, because people aren't building for it, and these other commercial platforms are. Just a long way of getting to what's your thoughts on hey, here's the open web / social platform versus here's the Twitter or the Facebooks of the world. Like, how do you make that distinction when people ask you where they should spend their time doing social, if you can?
I mean, this is very similar to if someone asked me what type of website should I have, right? There's different things that might be different fits for them. And TikTok might be exactly what a teenager is looking for, and Mastodon isn't, right? Like, I'm not going to try to force them onto it. I really like Mastodon, and I've been very surprised at how many folks just don't find it very sticky or have some issues with it. Like creating Mastodon account, for some people, it's a big barrier to pick a server and create your identity on that versus just going to mastodon.com, right? So a lot of us are just used to go to twitter.com if you want to use Twitter, and go to whatever. I didn't have too hard of that. Like, it was very similar to, if someone said, I wanted to use email, okay, first thing you got to do is find an email server, and then you create your name. It wasn't that hard for me. I don't get too offended if it's not for everyone. Like, at first I was like, man, what's wrong with you? Don't you care about this? Like, this is, you said you're leaving this other platform for these reasons, and this fixes it. And I don't do that anymore. My hope, I'm just running on optimism. And my hope is that in the long run, and by long run, I'm just talking about like 5 or 6 years, that that this stuff won't be complicated to people. In the same way that people subscribe to a podcast and they don't think about the word RSS, which we should be taking shots every time we say the word RSS in this episode. But in the same way that, like, RSS sounds scary. RSS reader sounds scary. Podcast, nobody thinks twice about podcast. Nobody thinks about, like, how do I send an email to someone? Oh, I have to write their name and then their server. No, that's not weird for anyone. And I'm hoping that the Fediverse is going to be this thing that just catches on in a way that's super natural. When Twitter came around in 2007, nobody understood it. Even though Facebook was around, I was trying to get people to sign on to Twitter, and they just were like, why? I don't understand the appeal of this in any way. And you were just constantly explaining how things worked and how usernames work, and nobody does that anymore. Like, it's just natural. I think that that ActivityPub is going to be like the RSS. It's going to be the thing that we don't really talk about that powers the Fediverse, and people aren't going to need constant explanations like they do now. And I hope that because of all this stuff, the things that are built around there will be so enticing and so good. The healthy meal will be so good, they'll just want to eat it because it's delicious and not because of how it was made. And they're not even going to have to think about it, how it was made. It just is. This is so much better than, the garbage they're selling down the street.
I thought that, I guess you don't have to comment on this, but I was hoping that Tumblr would have been that injection shot to connect WordPress and ActivityPub to the Fediverse. And I'll just frame it with the ActivityPub plugin. And you showed this as an example in your video. So if you have the ActivityPub plugin running on your WordPress website, which I do on the WP Minute, and you make a post, number one, just from like the typical 101 of a daily marketer, it just goes out there. Like, I don't have to do it. I don't have to send it to the Fediverse or go to my Mastodon account and punch it in. Like a lot of people have to do with Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. I know there's plugins out there that'll automatically post it, but it just lives in the Fediverse once I publish it. And two, once it's out there, let's say if I'm on my Mastodon account, in my app, I should say, on my phone, and I'm scrolling through and I leave a comment on that link, it automatically posts to the comment section of that post, let's say. That is fantastic. I mean, imagine having the conversations on Twitter about your post and then they just all show up on your post. Like, that alone should make people look at that and go, wow, engagement, amazing, off the charts. And going back to that connection to Tumblr, like Tumblr being a social network, I would have loved to seen, and maybe it'll still happen eventually, but I would have loved to seen that like core connection, WordPress, Fediverse, social network, and we're all kind of living in this like higher engagement world. But that's just like scratching the surface of what this ActivityPub plugin can do. Any other cool features of the ActivityPub plugin that you're liking and seeing through doing this series?
Well, okay, this is getting a little optimistic. I don't know. I think we think of the Fediverse as a Twitter alternative, or at the very least, a social media, right? A form of social media that it's as if I was on one social media platform and I could comment on another social media platform without creating an account there, right? That's how we think of it. I think that the Fediverse is going to be something far bigger, and it's not going to be just social media. It's going to be the replacement for podcasting 2.0 could be powered by ActivityPub. And the way that would work is I have a ActivityPub reader or a Fediverse, I have an account on the Fediverse, and through there I could be like, I'm going to start following Matt's podcast on here. And so like, that's that one-way RSS connection, right? That podcast connection, right? And there might be whole podcast players built around this. And once I like something, that podcast gets an actual like in the Fediverse. Or if I leave a comment, it actually goes there, right? So instead of just that one-way broadcasting, we might have this system of like two-way interactions. And I'm still thinking based on kind of current things that we're doing and how the Fediverse could kind of integrate with it. But I think there's almost like a new type of web that could be enabled. The missing ingredients might be things like portability for your username. Like right now, you're really kind of tied to, if you're on Mastodon and you want to move servers or whatever, that could break things a little bit. But eventually, I think we'll have some sort of Fediverse identity and from there be able to connect it to things. And if we move around from servers, people don't even have to know. They just always kind of connect to that identity. And if you change your podcasting company, maybe I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of interesting two-way stuff that could happen that we don't even know is missing right now, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned press you mentioned blogs and the ability to have those comments. When I think about the next use case, I'm hoping that Wired and Verge and TechCrunch all have that Fediverse integration, and not just like we have a Mastodon account, let's copy paste what we wrote on Twitter and put it in there, but actually when their blog post goes up, it also gets federated, becomes a first class system, first class user, basically. Like it's a post that hasn't been shared to the Fediverse, it lives on the Fediverse, and from there people can like subscribe to newspapers and stuff, write comments, they go into the comment section. And I'm feeling pretty optimistic about that, because I know that publishers more than anyone else have been burned by Facebook, they've been burned by Twitter, they've been they're the ones who are like, we're tired of building our audiences for some other platform, and then all of a sudden they shut off the algorithm or something. And if they switch to Fediverse integration and start kind of really leaning on, instead of focusing on posting on these other things, we're just going to post this on our site and it gets federated and it's a first class citizen of the Fediverse, then maybe users will start kind of coming in. That's maybe the first wave of users that come in, other than just looking for Twitter alternatives.
Yeah. I know in podcasting 2.0, this will get a little bit technical, but there's a lot of features that they're exploring, powered by ActivityPub, and especially like comments and, being able to like podcasts, like, cause this doesn't exist right now. Like, especially, blogging is fragmented, right? You just have search, right? You have Google, right? And other search engines, but there's no, I don't know of any, you're not going to a place to go, oh, I want to just look at these blog categories and see all the metadata there. But they're trying to do that with podcasting 2.0, thanks to things like ActivityPub, because that data, with air quotes, maybe metadata with air quotes, can be shared throughout all app experiences. So if you like my podcast in, let's say, Pocket Casts, it might show up in Overcast that you liked it. And that sort of like, that data can be everywhere if these other apps decide to like pull in the likes, pull in the comments. And it's just like a one-stop shop where, by enabling having these features live on or through ActivityPub, other apps can build upon that experience and then build the experiences that they want for their audiences. You don't want to see comments in this podcast app? No problem. They don't use comments in this podcast. You'll never see it. But in these other 3 podcast apps, comments are there. You can engage with them. And I really like that. Like, I think that's an amazing thing. Let's talk about the production of the show, of the series that you're building. Fantastic, and I had no doubts that it wouldn't be. You're producing the whole thing, working with a team, like one camera setup. I don't think it is, but judging by what I've seen. But what's the production look like behind the scenes? How does it all come together? Do you work with anybody else? How much work are you doing? Let us know.
So the interviews are mostly shot the same way you and I are chatting right now. I even bought a new camera to kind of make it look a little nicer, but they're shot in my office in San Francisco, just a shared place with my partner. And for the bulk of the non-interview stuff, like the intros and that first episode and the 5th episode, those are shot in Automatic's office on Mission Street in San Francisco, which is one of the coolest buildings in the entire city, and no one knows about it. It's a real gym. And I was super excited because I'd been in there before they moved in there. And when I found out they were there, I was like, can we shoot the whole thing there? And so we had one day to shoot in Automatic's office, and I hired a camera guy to kind of help, just because it was, if I had infinite days, I'd just do it all by myself. But I was like, we've got 5 episodes, we've got 6 hours. So I hired a friend to kind of come and shoot. And it was, for the most part, one camera. And I wrote the script myself, and I'm the on-screen guy, for better or worse. That's who you get. I just got to. And
the camera guy throws paper at you, right? He's throwing the paper at, or are you throwing it at yourself, like off the?
No,
the
camera
shot?
guy was throwing. Yeah, so he's a stunt double as well, and helped with Folly, I guess, too. The first episode is largely me in the office, kind of talking at the camera. And the next episode, which you haven't seen yet, is an interview with Evan Prodromo, who's the co-creator of Activity Pub. And I try to stay away from like, history and stuff like that. I just wanted to kind of get him talking about the things that someone who's just learning about it could really enjoy. Like, still keep this, instead of like aiming towards Fediverse users, let's try to get people to understand the potential of what this could really be. And as also part of the production, I got to write songs for the episodes, which is, long interest of mine is writing music. And anytime I get a chance to write a stupid jingle, I wrote a jingle for Activity Pub, I wrote a jingle for Mastodon. Well, yeah, and so it was just a chance. Everything I said when I was writing the script, I was like, I think there's a song potential here, and they were like, go for it. I was like, really? every weird, stupid idea I had. And Matt, as a contractor who had been working full time for a company for 10 years, as a contractor, I'm like, wow, when you're a contractor, you're like the expert. So if you just say something, they're like, oh, this must be a really good idea. If you're like full time with the company and stuff, you're like, oh, I think we should, do a song in here. Well, let's play it by this audience and see how it works. And see what
let's talk to legal. Let's get the marketing team involved. Oh God.
This is great. This is just like any stupid idea. I wish honestly I had more dumb ideas, because I would have loved to have seen where the limit was. No, Doc, you shouldn't parachute off of the tower for this. I think we got the point. I think we conveyed that. Yeah, they were super supportive of this.
Yeah. Well, I'm loving, I love the first episode. Watch the whole thing. I don't care that it was 10 minutes long or whatever it was. Watch the whole thing. It's fantastic. Can't wait to see the next episode. I hope if anyone from Automatic is listening, I bring Doc on to continue to do more content for WordPress.com beyond the Fediverse, if that's possible. But if you're also looking to hire somebody to jump off of a tower with a parachute with your WordPress logo on it, he's for hire at docpop.org. Check him out as a freelance WordPress content creator. Anything else, anywhere else folks can go to say thanks, to visit you online, Mastodon, Twitter, any other corporate social networks that folks can find you on?
Absolutely. I'm still on a lot of the corporate social networks, and the way to find me is docpop.org/about. I think that's the one. And that's where you can find my little link tree to everything. And this might be how we do it in the future. Instead of being like, here's my username, we just might be like, here's a section of my site where everything's listed. And that's what I'm trying right now. So you can find my GitHub, you can find everything all from that page.